how's it going? This is Indigenous Patriot. Thank you for joining me. Today is going to be the second part in our Fighting the Fake News series that I started last week. So if you haven't seen that one, please watch it. We're going to discuss a few things today. One of them is going to be kind of given a definition of what fake news is, as well as some examples and some other things that we'll discuss as we go along. So let's have a definition that we can agree upon with fake news. It's going to have to be like a blanket definition, though, because in my opinion, you can't just categorize it as one thing. What do I mean by that? So fake news is, in our society, we like to just think that it is just completely lies and just fake stuff that people are trying to run by us in order to cause us to think a certain way. While that could definitely be one of the definitions that we use, fake news isn't always lying. It's also using some truth in order to mislead. Because a lot of times when people are looking into things, what they do is they stop at the first definition that they find, the first bit of news that confirms their personal beliefs, and that's called a confirmation bias, okay? So fake news doesn't necessarily have to be something like from the site The Onion. If you're not familiar with The Onion, it is a parody site that basically it's like, to me, it's like an adult version of Cracked or Mad Magazine from when you were a kid and you're reading it, and it's just a bunch of silly stuff that's quite obviously fake if you're actually paying attention to the article that you're reading. They're preposterous, although at times some of their parody cuts close. The fake news could also be where somebody is utilizing a kernel of truth and they're just trying to manipulate you, and that's called propaganda. So in my personal definition of fake news, I would like to umbrella both of those. News that is obviously fake and news that has that kernel of truth but it's intentionally misleading. Both of those, to me, we can put right there under the umbrella of fake news. We're going to go with The Onion for my first example of fake news, and this is going to be obvious fake news because, well, just listen and you'll see. I'm going to change a couple of the words that are in the article so that I'm not using expletives, but you'll get the point. So the title of the article is "Bring Me Some Holiday Cheer, You Son of a Bee," says woman slamming Christmas tree up against the wall. Brattleboro, Vermont. In a desperate effort to get into the spirit of the season, local woman Miranda Krall was reportedly demanding that a Christmas tree bring her some holiday cheer Friday while slamming it against the wall. "Come on, I know you're holding out on me. You gotta have some Yuletide warmth in there somewhere, G-Diet," said a furious Krall, grabbing the decorated conifer by the trunk and shaking it violently in an effort to force the tree to dislodge a few crumbs of goodwill towards all. "I swear to God, if I'm not consumed by feelings of joy to the world and kinship of mankind in the next 15 minutes, I'll strangle you with your own string of lights, you sick F." At press time, Krall was warning the tree what happened to those who got in the way of her Christmas cheer by tearing apart a wreath. So obviously, we see that that there's no way that a sane person is going to take this particular article at its face value, and the author's intention was to cause some levity and also some Christmas amusement, I'm sure. The article itself has no author listed, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about in probably the next episode when I break down articles and what to look for. But I hope you enjoyed that one. Next, we'll talk about articles that are meant to intentionally mislead. Now we're going to go to an article from Newsweek, and this particular article is going to discuss another article that has fake news. The reason why I don't go to the actual article with the fake news is because I don't generally like to give them traffic whenever possible. So the article from Newsweek is titled, QAnon supporters sharing fake news that Barack Obama was arrested for espionage. This article itself came out 12/2/2020. Holding on to their long-standing belief that a mass arrest of leading Democrats is just around the corner, supporters of the QAnon conspiracy theory are spreading fake news about Barack Obama being detained for espionage. The false claims have been rejected on the Canadian news website Conservative Beaver, which adds that a judge has imposed a media blackout in the U.S. on reporting of Obama's arrest, which is really interesting to me that they think that a Canadian judge has any kind of jurisdiction on what we can do here in the United States. That right there initially is something that causes you to question the veracity of the claims if you actually take the time to think about it. The report says Obama conspired with a former CIA officer to communicate classified information up to the top secret level to intelligence officials of the People's Republic of China. So this is where things become interesting, because what they are doing, and I'll discuss this in a second, is they're taking something that actually happened and changing it. So they're taking a kernel of truth and they're manipulating it in order to fit their narrative. So here we are. Not only is the copy almost identical to a Justice Department press release from August detailing former CIA officer Alexander Yuching-Ma's espionage charge, the website lifts entire quotes from several officials, such as Assistant Attorney General for National Security John C. Demers and Attorney for the District of Hawaii Kenji Price, that have nothing to do with Obama. And that's what kind of confuses people, because if they heard anything about this espionage charge for Alexander Yuching-Ma, then there's that piece in their brain that's like, I think I heard about that. And then they read about Obama, and, you know, they're like, okay? The issue with this is that when they add the quotes from other people, it adds some credence to what they're saying. So when they have the entire quotes from officials such as Assistant Attorney General John C. Demers, it is adding substance to it. It is saying these people that are in high positions in our government are saying that this happened. So then people are more likely to believe it. Back to the article. Conservative Beaver also includes a tweet from stand-up comedian Pete Dominick starting how he took a trip to Crazy Town on Twitter to see Obama has been arrested, but is now back to reality as proof of celebrities and influencers spreading the reports. So this particular article, what they did was they are claiming that celebrities and influencers are in on the media blackout, that they're trying to push a false narrative that Obama did not get arrested. And so it is calling into question any reports of this article from Canadian Beaver being fake news. Now that we've had the opportunity to see two different types of fake news, one that was parody and obvious, and one that was a little more insidious and manipulative, I'm going to go over an article from NPR just briefly called A Finder's Guide for Facts, and I'm going to leave a link of it in the description below. The piece that I'm going to cover are tips that we can use to fight fake news. So here's a finder's guide for facts. First, take a moment. If you have time to scroll Facebook or watch the news, you probably have a moment to decide if a news story seems credible. Ask some quick questions. Is the story so outrageous you can't believe it? kind of like the Onion one where the woman's beating the crap out of the Christmas tree, right? Maybe you shouldn't. Respect the voice inside your head that says, what? Is the story so outrageous you do believe it? That's also a warning sign. Many stories play on your existing beliefs. If the story perfectly confirms your worst suspicions, look for more information. Does the headline match the article? Many compelling headlines don't. And this is a really important point because I've seen so many times on social media where somebody shares an article based upon the headline and they're like, well, such and such, such and such, such and such. And then when you go into the article and you read, it answers all of the things that that person brought up. Misleading headlines. Does the article match the news story it's lifted from? Many sites rewrite other news articles to fit the political slant of their presumed audience. Look for links to original sources and click through and see what the original says. When I go over how to break down articles, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more depth. We'll actually see it in action. Are quotes in context? Look for the sentences before and after the quote that makes your blood boil. If the article fails to give them, that's a warning sign. This is also important when we're dealing with videos. A lot of times we see a snippet of a video, and if we just saw like a couple moments before the snippet or a couple moments after the snippet, the context would provide a different story than what we are cherry-picked to see. Is the story set in the future?
Are we back? We're back. What do you mean we're in the future?
October 21st, 2015.
It's hard to get first-hand reporting from there. Any story that tells you what will happen should be marked down 50% for this reason alone. I've actually seen articles that were dated ahead of the time. Always look at the dates on your articles. Also, when somebody's telling you that somebody is going to such and such, such and such, such and such, question it. Does the story attack a generic enemy? Vague denunciations of Washington or the media or Trump supporters or the left should be marked down 99%. Good reporting doesn't make these kinds of generalizations and is specific about who is making a claim about what. We've seen in previous videos of mine that I'm not a big fan on blanket statements. Are you asked to rely on one killer factoid? Not a good idea. If a hacked document proves an implausible conspiracy, look for the context that shows what the document really means. As for photos and video, use Ronald Reagan's old slogan, trust but verify. If there's any doubt about a stunning video, see if more traditional sources link to it. They love video clicks as much as anyone. If they refrain, there may be a good reason. Who is the news source anyway? And this is an important one too. Traditional news brands may occasionally get it wrong, sometimes hugely wrong, but at least you know where to find them and hold them accountable. Less prominent news sites might carry compelling stories, but expect them to show you who they are and where they gathered information. Does the news source appear to employ editors? Many news organizations produce stories that are checked before publication. Others don't. It's a big deal. Hiring an editorial staff shows the publication's respect for you and matters more than political bias. The New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, for example, have different owners, audiences, stories, perspectives, and obsessions. Both have made mistakes and omissions. Both send reporters out into the world and back them up with an editorial process that catches and corrects many errors. This means both can be informative regardless of your politics or theirs. And that's also important. Will a reputable news source push fake news? Yes, they will. But the number of times that they do that is small compared to some of the blogs and things that we come across on the internet. Are you told to trust me? Don't. It's the post-trust era. Expect everyone to show where their facts come from, link to underlying articles, and demonstrate that they've argued honestly. Here's a way that they may bolster their credibility. Did the writer engage with anyone who disagrees? Did they call a senator whose legislation bugs them? Did they try to grasp what the president-elect was doing or merely repeat one of his more outrageous statements? If it's a broadcast interview, was the guest presented with genuine opposing views and challenged to answer? Those who wrestle with opposing arguments do you a service and often improve their own arguments. So that's basically what that's saying, is they're looking for exculpatory information. They're looking for something that doesn't agree with them so that they get another side. And that is really important. Broaden your palette. Make a point to check sites that do not agree with your politics. I do this all the time. And in a future episode, I'm going to talk about one of the apps that I use that checks media bias and how in particular I use that app. Be open to the idea that some falsehoods are sincerely held. In spite of all the warnings here, some inaccurate news stories grow out of haste or misinformation rather than pure cynicism. But they're still false. If a news source consistently passes the test in this guide, then support it. Gathering reliable information isn't free. Helping to pay for it aligns the news source's interests with yours. So hopefully this has been an informative episode. It's a little longer than the last one. Next episode, we're going to break down some articles, not necessarily fake news articles, but basically what I look for in an article to kind of have a little bit more faith in the reporting. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this. If this is something that you like, please remember to hit the subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on Facebook, then please join my An Indigenous Patriot. I'm also at WIKWEKO on Twitter. So An Indigenous Patriot on YouTube, An Indigenous Patriot on Facebook, and at WIKWEKO on Twitter. I'll see you soon. Lepich Kanawe, thank you. I will see you again.